So it's the kind of situation or tension that I constantly am going through. I think psychologically what I do feel is that when I was in corporate, the focus is a lot on sharpening my skills on how to lead others. But when I'm in a business owner setting, a lot is got to do with leading myself. And leading myself, as we all know, is always the hardest thing to do. Hello, hi, welcome to season 2 of Building Better Leaders. And we have here Seok Hian.
Hello, hi everybody.
Well, the reason why Seok Hian keeps on appearing is because in season 1 itself, I was looking through the data, and it seems that whenever Seok Hian appears, the engagement increases. So that's
Nice to know that.
really, really nice to know that. So that's why I have Seok Hian as going to be my permanent guest for season 2 at least. So surprise, surprise. And
I
she'll
like to be
be
pleasantly stuck here. Thank you for inviting.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I think the reason why your episodes picked up a lot of traction in season 1 is because we are probably very passionate about the same things as well, which is really about setting up young managers or setting up managers to succeed. Not only managers, but anybody, right, who joins a company. A lot of times it's really about setting them up for success. So I think that is the real reason why. And we get, at least for me, I get really passionate and angry when someone is left all alone, maybe because of trauma, because of my past as well. When I joined a company, kind of like just sat all alone there and no one cared about me and so on. So I guess we just wanted to avoid all these things. But anyway, so welcome, welcome. And the format is going to be a little bit, it's the same, but a bit different compared to the first one, where in this season itself, we will be addressing only one tension that a leader would be facing. And it will be much shorter than before. It is probably about like 20 to 30 minutes. And so there's more bite size. On top of that, we will be also using themes from our book. That's the book there, and there's the book
Ta-da.
there, and there's the book here. To be fair, I mean, we just have a few more left, but I believe there are still books in the shelves in Singapore. Yeah, so we'll be using the book as a baseline or jump off point to have a discussion. On top of that, surprise, surprise, we are actually celebrating 1 year of the book's
Yay.
release anniversary as well. So that's why we are here. And so I mean, just wanted to talk about tensions and so on. I'm just wondering what we will be actually talking about in this episode when it comes to managing tensions.
Yes. So I think one context that not everybody will know is that when Kausern, you're writing the part of the book that you take care of, I think you were like you mentioned it was like a therapy session for you because you
It
were
is, it
in
is, it is,
transition or just
it is.
transiting out of
Yes, yes,
corporate
yes.
leadership into business ownership. Yeah, so I'm actually curious about, how does that affect you in general? And therefore, I think to our audience is, you can start to take a look at this tension when it comes to identity. Be it, you don't have to leave corporate to actually experience that tension. But I think it's
Yeah,
also whenever there's a restructuring, when a job role change or when a title change,
that's true.
be it due to promotion or whatever, I think there is always this adjustment that we would make or we have to make, but nobody sort of tell us.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm just very curious, like for you, Carlson, like when you left corporate, I think now it's like 2 years plus, right?
Yeah, actually into
So,
third year of my
yeah,
business.
third year now. So, what
Yeah.
surprised you the most about yourself at the time?
Okay, because I'm a very structured person. So I will structure it and probably, I mean, throughout this conversation in my head, I'll probably structure it as in like what was before, and then the moving into the new role, so the tension itself, and then how I release that tension,
Okay.
right? So I think what surprised me the most is that learning that managing a business before and building a business is different altogether. I remember speaking to someone before that, and this person was saying that, hey, it's you're running a multi-million business. I mean, what's the difference with building your own business? I mean, I thought that was a sage advice. Unfortunately, there is difference. Of course, there are certain skills which is transferable, but generally it's a very different thing because it's a mindset change, right, altogether.
Yeah.
I think the biggest mindset change for me is that when you are managing an existing business, you're being carried by a system which is already in existence. While when you're building your own business, it's really about you or me being the system itself, right? So that's the biggest thing. And it's to realize that in the corporate world, at least in the business before, there's so much actually momentum which is already existing. So like for example, processes are there, the reputation is there, the clients are there, and so on. So my role is very much is to steward and to manage. Yeah, so there's a lot of momentum going, and it's very different from running my own business because the moment I take my foot off the gas pedal, everything stops. The engine stops altogether. While in a corporate setting, even though some people take leave or even I go away for a while, the business still runs because of the engine is still running. I think that part a lot of times, in theory, actually I knew about it, but when you're actually in it, that came out the strongest lah, in terms of what surprised me. So
Okay.
analogy wise, if I can think of an analogy, it's very much like conducting a conductor conducting a orchestra that will be in the corporate line. So the role of a conductor at that point in time is to bring out the best in everybody to be able to service the integrity and what the composer wants the song to be or the piece to be, right? As opposed to solopreneur or entrepreneur, it's a one-man band. So the moment I stop playing, there's no orchestra to back me up. So that is kind of like the biggest surprise lah that I feel, right? So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to transit. And I have to constantly remind myself that I need to be on the business. That means to actually start creating systems to run it like a business and not be in the system itself or be in the business itself, right? So there's a difference between being in the business and being on the business. And at times, I think there's a lot of comfort in being in the business, especially when you're running trainings, when you're doing coaching and so on. All these activities sometimes deceive me that I'm actually building something, but it's not. It's just operationalizing it. I still need to be able to build infrastructures. So I have to constantly remind myself it's really about being on the business and not being in the business.
Nice. I like the way you put that. I mean, it's very clear. And what I've also heard is that while we are in corporate, and including me last time, is that we have to navigate the system because it's an established one. Yeah. And of course, as leaders, we start to optimize the system. But now when you're out of it, you realize you are no longer just a cog in the wheel, you are the wheel itself. Yeah. So if
Yes,
you stop, everything stops literally,
yes, yes,
right?
yes. Like a flywheel, right? That's what they say.
Yeah, exactly. So being in the business and on the business, yeah, it's about the activities that we do while executing the systems rather than, building the system, and that is totally different ball
Yes.
game altogether. Yeah, true. Yeah, that brought me some memories as well. For me, I think I have a slightly different identity shift from you because when I left, I actually gave
How
myself
long ago did you leave the corporate?
it's about I think 11 years now. That's
Wow.
more than a
I'm
decade.
still
Oh
a
gosh.
baby here. Okay, anyway, all right, okay,
No,
continue.
no, but I kind of slightly different from you, and that potentially could give our audience a different reference point. Is that I did not aim to build a business, but more of a practice. That means I purposely want to keep it small and just with a few other associates that I work closely with, and it's more the practice that I enjoy doing. But that said, there is also a drastic identity shift. Yeah. So you were right that we were so well supported by the established systems where we
Yeah.
came from, especially.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. So last time it's like, oh, if I need to travel, there's someone else who will book the tickets for me.
Exactly,
you know.
exactly.
Yeah, things like that.
Like any
Yeah.
other small things is like, oh, let's go to this place to have a
Yeah.
company trip, that kind of thing, and so on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if
Anyway,
things
yes,
will
yes,
miraculously get done, there'll be a
yes.
hotel
You're
for
right.
us to stay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we were spoiled in that sense. And what really struck me when I left corporate was why would people now want to talk to me? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing from a psychological standpoint. It's like you no
Mm,
longer have a title behind you or a corporate behind you. So what happened to you actually psychologically when those structures disappear?
yeah, I think what you just said about credibility, I think that was the first thing lah. The very fact that once you don't have the title anymore, or at least you are not representing the company
Yes.
that that I was being put in charge. I won't say that the phone call stops. I mean, if that happened, then which means I actually carry a very bad character before. But there is actually kind of like no reason for them. To be fair, it's a different industry
A different
altogether.
reason, maybe.
Yeah, correct. So I think the whole thing about transitioning into this whole line, I think really the credibility part is the one which I need to rebuild again. I mean, not say rebuild, I mean, it's built on top of it in terms of like
Yes.
building your own reputation. Then I think the other thing psychologically that affected me is also, strangely for me, is loneliness as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think previously, because I get the energy and joy working with young people, and the company that was in had a lot of thriving, a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, and so on. And in fact, I actually have got them still here. These are the guys, right? Yeah. And so I think right now, when you are alone or when you have got a group of volunteers instead and a part-timer, it's a very different feel altogether. So I think loneliness is something which I felt, or at times I feel as well. I think the other thing is just self-doubt. Self-doubt. I think that's also a big one in terms of like, at times it's like, why am I doing this, where I could have been, why am I looking at
Yeah.
a P&L, and all these things, right? So I think self-doubt is a big thing as well. It impacted me psychologically. There's also a constant background anxiety as well, which I do feel. Yeah. Which, because you're in charge of everything, right? From product development to cash flow to clients to visibility to etc etc etc. So I think my mind is constantly thinking about the business 24/7, and I think that why this thing came about is when my part-time staff, there's a certain expectation that I had on her which I didn't know, that I also was expecting her to be 24/7 as well.
Good luck to
Not
you.
not the operative but part-time, right? So clearly there was a lot of friction. Then I started to realize that, it's because everything was just I was just thinking. So then whatever that was thinking, I kind of like just say it out loud to her. And being a very responsible person she's thinking that every noise is a signal, which is not true. So yeah, so it wasn't helpful for her as well. So I think really about learning how to manage my anxieties, learning what is helpful for the other person is a very different thing, compared to in corporate. Where corporate there's a bigger visibility. Everybody knows what is the mission. While you're building something, the mission is still there, but sometimes certain direction can change. And I think it's very confusing to your staff if I just kind of like, I'm thinking about this today, and then tomorrow I'm thinking about something else, and so on. So I think that is the other one. I think just low-key background anxiety, always thinking about the business. Because of that, I think I also suffer from decision fatigue as well. Yeah, I think it's also got to do with my tendency to be perfect as well, the perfectionism thing. So I think, the black and white thing, this is the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. I think back in corporate, it's a bit different when you have got different people to bounce ideas off. This one is kind of like you are alone. I've got a co-worker in the form of the part-timer, as well as also AI as well. But as you know, sometimes it is not reliable altogether. I mean the AI, not the part-timer. Hi, Hui Ying. But there's also this thing about freedom and fear. What I mean is that, so being alone or running a business, there's certain freedom, which means I have got more time to spend with my family. If my family does need help whatsoever, I'm there. I can just say, okay, I can rearrange things, versus if I'm running in a corporate setting, right? But that also comes with fear, because of that freedom. Then there's also the fear of like lack of discipline and all these things. So I have to really kind of put in place certain disciplines. So it's the kind of situation or tension that I constantly am going through. So that affects me from a psychological standpoint. So that if I can sum it all up, I think psychologically what I do feel is that when I was in corporate, the focus is a lot on sharpening my skills on how to lead others. But when I'm in a business owner setting, a lot is got to do with leading myself. And leading myself, as we all know, is always the hardest thing to do, because we're so self-critical, at least for me, self-critical, high expectations, and so on. So so that's the long answer to your short question.
That's loaded. That's so much, going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then now I'll love to find out how best to actually support you as well moving forward. So
Thank
I
you.
think there's one thing that really jumps out at me, which is about the professional capacity and the personal capacity you talked about.
Mm, mm,
So, even though you left corporate, but also in your business professional capacity, there is this thing that you need to run, like 24/7 decision making and all those things. And this is something that I think a lot of employees who are not owners will not truly understand. And this is always the tension and the misgap. But there is also the internal personal tension between your professional capacity and your personal capacity. While in your
mm,
professional capacity, you have a job to do, you have a scope to manage, right? But your personal capacity brings in your personal nuances and personality tendencies. Like you say, you want perfection, you want things to be structured, and get things done nicely and all this. And that adds on to your sense of responsibility. Yeah. And
yeah.
now it's just that your business is 1.5 men, size, but therefore you actually plays a very big overlap role. Yeah. And that complicates things. So for audience, for people out there who are taking on leadership role, I think that is something for them to think about. It's like between your professional capacity and your personal capacity, how much which influencing which, and how
Mm,
much does it overlap? I think there might be a tension because a lot of times, I mean, with being in corporate for decades, we also know that not every decision that HQ or the boss kind of decides we can align personally or agree. I think
yeah,
that always creates the tension.
you're right. You're right. Mm,
Nice, interesting. But I hope I mean for me it's like it's been 11 years. I have similar situations as you.
yeah.
Even though I'm running a practice and not like aiming to build up the business, it does have anxiety when you don't see revenue coming in and you don't know what you have not done or done wrongly, and
Even
what
after
can you do
11
better.
years?
11 years now, I'm more carefree in the sense it's like I
Okay.
accepted what I do as.
I was like, wow, even after 11 years, you still have to go through
No.
that. Okay.
Well, I
Okay.
found how to convert, that's a groove.
I see. I
You
see.
need to
All
find
right.
your
All right.
groove to convert,
Okay, I
revenue.
need to identify my groove. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I think given that it's been 1 year since we last published our book last year in
Yeah.
June, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
July. How is leadership not automatic still kind of resonate with you today?
Well, I think ultimately it's really important to understand there's actually a difference between being a manager and being a leader altogether. I think there's something which comes out really clearly, especially in the business. I think before when we were writing this book, I was still kind of like almost leaving corporate. So the very fact that I am meeting up with different business owners or different leaders, senior leaders altogether, one thing which comes out very clearly is that they think that by promoting somebody, leadership skills will automatically comes with it. It's like a natural thing, right?
It's
I
such a
don't blame
myth, right?
them. Yeah, I don't blame them. Reason being is because, like for example, the typical thing which I see is that a top salesperson. So the next best thing for this person is to become a sales manager, put some people under this person, and then let him or her groom this person. But after a few months later, you start to see this high performer not being high performing anymore. Everything is starting to break apart. Why is that so, right? I think it's the whole thing about why a top footballer does not necessarily be a good coach, because it's a different skill set altogether. So one, we're talking about technical skills, about really productivity, performance, and so on and so forth, while the other one is really getting results through people. There's a different skill sets altogether. There's a lot of people skills, there's a lot of communication skills. I think that's the real difference. So manager is a role, while leadership is a skill. It's a different thing altogether. And leadership generally comes with people skills, communication skills, being
Yes.
strategic, and so on. So I think that came out very, very strongly. Even in fact, that kind of still fuel me up in terms of why I'm doing what I'm doing, even though I mentioned all the anxiety and all these things. But I think that those things still anchors me, those things still drive me. And I just feel that managers or organizations need to realize that you need to not think that they will be automatically become a good leader. You need to actually prepare them. There needs to be intentionality in preparing them. Either you put them through a class or put them through mentoring, put them through coaching and so on, because these things need to have structure, you need to learn it. On top of that, you also need to have support as well for them. So I think to me, after 1 year of the release of this book, it is still the same thing, which we actually how to be structured a book anyway. It is the 3 domains of leadership, right? So one is leading yourself, then second is leading others, and the third is leading the organization. I think that was in fact how we structured the book, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 in itself. I think what I realized is that at any one time, at least for me, it doesn't mean that I am leading an organization. So depending on where I am, sometimes I need to lead myself, sometimes I need to lead others, sometimes I lead an organization. But it's to have that conscious and mindfulness, knowing when to shift and when to move, because depending on which domain you're in, the mindset, the communication, everything else is very different compared. You just cannot have a one size fits all sort of strategy lah. So that is what I realized after 1 year. How about yourself?
Nice. I guess that explains why there is no one single university curriculum of leadership or parenting.
Yes, yes.
I mean, for me, I agree. And I'm very much in line with what you said, is that it is really about that intention and it's about that mindfulness. That's why, similarly, when people meditate, it's like the moment you think that, oh, I'm doing so well, you're already not in that moment. So I think leadership to a large extent is that way. And therefore, identity, knowing yourself becomes very crucial. While you're performing a role, you need to also understand, at least for me, is that I need to understand who am I and who is the person performing the role. And is that the kind of person I want to be? And how can I execute the role in the way that aligns to my value and the interests of the organization? Yeah. So that to me is that is the difficult part. I think the skill sets and all these are easy in a way to acquire, to learn a framework and all this. It's always that mindset and the focus or purpose that is not easy to kind of hold on to, especially when you're firefighting in your department and all this.
I've got a question to ask before we come to an end. We started off by saying, the tension is usually during transitions. Either, you change jobs or you change bosses or there is takeover or there is integration and so on, right? And the tensions that we explored just now, like how I went through during the transition, what I go through from a work perspective as well as also psychologically as well. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, what kind of advice do you think would be helpful for somebody going through transition so that they remain like grounded, they remain focused, and they don't lose because I think where I'm coming from is that a lot of times we tie our identity to the role that we have been given, right? So that's why we hear a lot of stories of when a CEO is no longer a CEO and they kind of like lost themselves, right? Because they didn't build a personal identity for themselves. So I'm just wondering, is there any practical advice for somebody so that when they go through transitions, which today many transitions are happening, how can they still remain grounded and remain true to themselves?
In fact, I feel that the tension will always be there even while you're doing your leadership role that you have been doing for the last 3 years or 5 years. It's just that any transition amplifies that tension, because it is something that shifts you from, or it jerks you away from what is familiar to you versus to what is now useful for you. And that is the conscious decision that as leaders in taking on a new role or different role, be it promotion or, joining a new company, that needs to constantly calibrate. I think that's why it amplifies the tension. I mean, doing any corporate role or leadership role will always have a tension between what you would prefer to do versus what the formal authority needs you to perform. Like, you may have to fire someone that's from a formal authority, professional capacity, but personally you don't like it. and you know why the person couldn't perform, right? So, but it requires you to do. But when you get promoted to a more senior role or change a company or your leadership role changes, there is a new recalibration that needs to be done, which not everybody are informed about or aware about. Yeah. So it's about what used to work for me, but now in this new role or new company, I need to recalibrate and see whether it's still useful and what is the now new useful thing to do.
Okay. I think what would be helpful, or at least what was helpful for me in any sort of transition, is to be able to have conversations like this with somebody who has either gone through it or they're able to point out blind spots that I have, right? So I think being mentored by somebody, or at least have conversations with somebody, or being in a community, or join a class, whatever, right?
Yes.
So the bottom line is that what it will be helpful is that the person who doesn't have any sort of stake in your life and this person, you have full trust with this person to be able to point out to you what are the blind spots, right?
Awareness is the first step. Yeah, but it doesn't help you. Like, you're anxious at that time, right? But you still need someone to guide you to overcome or share with you some tips and tricks on overcoming that. So I think a coach or mentor, in addition to someone who have been there, done that, that always helps, a community and all this.
Okay. All right. That's good. I think we have come to an end of episode 1. And if there's anything that you would like to add on for our listeners, Seok Hian?
Not exactly on top of mind, but I think now, I mean, as we talk about it, it starts to become very clear to me about, there is always this tension, and it's like, how can we actually acknowledge it and therefore see what this tension is trying to protect versus what is useful to do moving forward. Yeah. What about you?
I think for me, again, every time when I have a conversation with you, it feels like therapy, like how we did for the book as well. And I think just having a conversation with somebody who helps me to remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing, and to remain objective, and to remind myself again on the values which I believe in, to keep me moving. Especially, I think the question that hit me the most is when you ask me about psychologically how I'm feeling, and I'm trying to be as truthful as possible on how I'm feeling. And I think by having conversations just like this, even on a podcast, it is really helpful for me to pick myself up again.
I'm glad it did. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you on episode 2. Hope you enjoyed and learned something from this episode. Okay, bye bye.
Yes. Bye bye.